Okay guys, the final video, well maybe not the final video, but at least the summary video of today's audition is ready for us to record. And this is my friend Doug, first time actually getting a chance to meet him. And although I've been recording some of my thoughts in previous videos as we were doing the audition today, thought it might be a good idea to get some feedback from Doug, hear why he was even in the market to begin with, and get his impressions before we tell you what the verdict was. So let me turn it over to my good friend Doug from New Orleans.
Okay, thank you, Jason. So I got into the audio hobby somewhere around 2010. Had my first real system in 2012, where I basically bought a room that I heard. I bought the speakers, the preamp, the amp. The speakers I had were Lumen White Artesian. The amps were some Class A tube amps from Aon. And after listening to them from a number of years, although I really loved the sound, I decided I just wanted to try something different. So I came up to Houston to visit Jason, and we auditioned some speakers. The first were the Rockport Atria II, price point somewhere around mid-20s, a little bit above mid-20 maybe, but very impressed with this build quality. I had heard Rockport speakers at shows before, audio shows, never really got up close and personal with it. I mean, just knocking on it, feeling it, it is rock solid. Their website shows how these speakers are made. Now, this was an entry-level Rockport that I listened to today. I was very impressed. It was fun to listen to. I can't say that it really had any weaknesses at all. For someone getting into the hobby that has that kind of money to spend, I mean, an entry-level speaker at $7,000, I mean, it sounds kind of crazy, but it was solid. I enjoyed listening to it. It was a lot of fun, and I can't say any bad things about it. I guess for me personally, given that I'm going from basically a cabinet type speaker looking to do something different, the Rockport sort of had a notch down on the competition just from I was looking for something different. But I would love to hear more of the Rockport lineup, especially some of their mid-upper level. So if I ever see them at the show, I'm definitely going to stick in that room for a while and listen to them. So they were a lot of fun. I mean, I'll talk about what I thought compared to the other speakers, but that was the first speaker I listened to, and I just sat there and just had a blast going through my playlist of different things. I was like, this is a fun speaker to listen to, non-fatiguing, very musical, and just a beautiful finish, and you have different custom colors you can order. So I don't know much about Rockport otherwise, but I will say thumbs up so far on what I've experienced at their entry-level speaker.
Yeah, I think I would echo everything you said. You know, the fun comment resonated with me because it translated to me a little bit differently, but it was just super well balanced and non-fatiguing. One that you can obviously find other speakers and probably within their own lineup that does this thing better, but if you wanted a speaker that just all around, you know, hard to fault and balanced and easy to listen to, I kind of made the analogy, you know, you have the British speakers and then you have American, more dynamic hi-fi, and then you have the British that are more mid-range centric and whatnot. I would almost put the Rockports in the Atlantic Ocean in between that. They're so easy to listen to and balanced, like the Harbors and Spendors, but they have enough dynamics like the YGs and whatnot to satisfy that crowd. You can always find things that do better than the Rockports in certain areas, and the only thing I would fault with it is my preface video heard them in another room, and they were a little chesty, but it was due to the room. Everything in the new room that we listened to today pretty much went away. I think the bass is still a little bit colored, but not as deep, you know, as you can get. But again, this is their first model on their line and a relatively small driver. And we were in a room with almost no confined walls. So pressurizing the room we were in was much more difficult task than a normal room. So yeah, there was nothing to fault. The thing I thought was the most impressive, I think you did as well, the cabinet construction and we did the knuckle wrap test. There was just no competition at all between it and YG, and everybody would think YG would win on the. Now the YG was not the double thickness aluminum, but still, I don't think you can get a better knuckle wrap test than the Rockports, and you get it at the very
brick or concrete.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather wrap the brick with my knuckle than hit that thing again. But basically, I think for them to give you that level of cabinet construction in their first model, and it being significantly less than the YG, definitely was a good start to the day in the audition process. But why don't we graduate? The next was going to be the Vantage from YG.
YG Vantage, yeah. So going into this, I've been to several shows, and I love my speakers, the Lumen Whites. I just love the character of them. And so when I go to shows, I always use that as my benchmark. And there's a few rooms, that I like better than mine. Some speakers are, $230,000, and I'm like, But YG acoustics, every room I've ever been in with YG acoustics, I think to myself, one day I would love to get a pair of YG acoustics. The sound stage, the build quality, it's always a well-balanced speaker. It's sexy in its looks, streamlined design. Engineering is just amazing. They did redo their tweeter in a newer model where they've gone more to a silk tweeter, and so that has some advantages. Like Jason said, this is not the double cabinetry like you see on the Sonya 2.2, so that I think might have some factor in the knock test. But I was excited to listen to YG. I have never heard them sound bad, even in bad rooms, and this did not disappoint. This is a Vantage model. I will tell you that the immediate thing I noticed, a little bit more sound staging compared to the Rockport, a little wider range, but the control on the lower end was the most impressive to me. The Rockports went low, but it was a little bit of a muddled low. The YGs just seemed to hold it in total control, very musical as well. The intimate voicing and female vocalists, fabulous, and even things like Rush and electronica. I mean, just total control of the lower end. Very fun to listen to. I really enjoyed it. And when I listen to the YGs, I'm thinking, I can't even imagine how much better the Sonya 2.2s would be to this. To me, it was audio mecca, and I was very impressed with it.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying right now was echoed by the dealers themselves. Most of the people that were at the dealership, I think 3 out of 3, at least that we were talking to, prefers the YG to the model of the Rockport. I was a little less enthused with the YG. I'd heard the YGs there before. I hear that everything that Doug says is true. I mean, it is a meticulously perfect speaker in so many attributes. I think the only thing that one thing, the sealed box sub design, or the woofer design, really pays off in what Doug was saying. You can really tell the difference. And so, yes, there's no doubt you can pick positives from the YG over the Rockports in many areas. The way that I was a little less enthusiastic about the YGs is because it's almost too hyper analytical of a speaker in terms of, I felt like I was listening to 3 drivers versus, now they were perfect drivers doing what that speaker probably measures quite well. But in terms of transporting me to an experience where I thought I was listening to something other than speakers and getting that toe thumping kind of thing and going head moving to the music, wasn't quite there with the YGs. So from a taste perspective, it really is dependent on, are you more of a Harbith spender guy, or are you an American speaker guy? Where you fall in that line. If you're definitely against Harbith spender and don't like that kind of sound, then the YGs are going to be perfect for you.
The YGs didn't scream at you like other cabinet speakers did. I didn't know where the sound was coming from. It all seemed to be right up there in front of me. Very revealing. The voices were great. The timbre of cellos and things of that nature were just great. I think I liked them a little bit more than you did, but I mean, I'm a big YG fan. I think that they're fantastically built speakers. I think no matter what, I've heard the small ones, I've heard the big ones. I think that they're fantastic.
Yeah, and I would say everything that we're saying, even criticism, we're talking about at that reference level. I mean, these speakers will blow away, most anything below it. It's going to be hard to find a lot of speakers, although you can. I mean, these are a lot of money, so it's not ridiculously hard to find some speakers that cost less. But when you look at the amount of work that goes into the cabinetry of both the YG and the Rockport, and the ability for them to minimize resonance, even though we thought the Rockport was better in that regard, still the YG, a billet of an aluminum chassis, it's still going to be loads better than most anything else below it on the market. Both companies put a lot into that cabinet construction and their drivers. So you are getting technology for the money, both in cabinetry and drivers with those two companies. So whether it's still worth it, that's an individual thing. And any criticism we're saying right now is very much at the super reference, like nitpicking form. So could I live with the YGs? Absolutely. But that brings us to the final comparison, and it's a little bit unfair because the MBLs that are next on the agenda were significantly higher in price. So we were factoring that in if we had the equivalent price Rockports and YGs. But I'll let Doug talk about the MBL and why he came to his decision after doing the MBLs.
Well, I wish we could have compared the Sonya 2.2 to the MBL, but that wasn't in the cards today. So MBL is one of those speakers that ever since I got into this hobby, I would walk into those rooms and just look at that speaker in awe. For those of you that aren't familiar with MBL, look it up online. I mean, it's just a space age looking crazy speaker. The design is just amazing. The way that it generates sound waves is just impressive. So it's just a thing of beauty. Now, my wife said it was hideous when I showed her a picture of it, but I thought it's just spectacular. My daughter thought it was awesome looking. Impressions, as soon as I heard the very first vocalist, I almost jumped out of my chair. It was so different than the YGs. As much as I loved the YGs, it's almost like, and I hate to use the reference because I use this in audiophile articles, but it's like the veil was lifted. The sound stage was totally different. It sounded like the singer, moved back 10 feet on the stage, and that the drummer moved 10 feet to the right, 10 feet to the left. It seemed like you were truly in the middle of an auditorium watching a concert, as opposed to being in a small little space listening to the person sing to you. Now, truth be told, some people like that intimacy of having the person singing right to you, but I have to tell you, it was really impressive just right away. Bam! How the sound stage opened up. It sounded different, but in a good way for me. I really, really liked it. Immediately, I did notice that compared to the YG acoustics, if I had one little criticism, and it's little because the bass was plenty good enough, plenty tight enough. I mean, we did everything from Dark Side of the Moon to Rush to female vocalist to some classical stuff. It was great, but the YG acoustics probably is a little tighter bass, a little bit more controlled on the lower end. But again, with the speakers of this quality at the reference range, it's really nitpicking here. I mean, it's like you get so much different stuff on one end of it with a little sacrifice on the lower end. I enjoyed listening to them over and over again. They're beautiful speakers. The other plus is honestly, like in my particular audio room, I mean, I have friends over and I have 3 people sitting across. If you're not sitting right in the middle with my current setup, you're not really getting the full, sound staging and dynamics of it all. I mean, this is an omnidirectional speaker, so really, no matter where you kind of sit within reason, you're getting the same sound, and I think that was really impressive. I was very impressed with it. The difference surprised me because I've heard them at shows before. Now, when I've been in audio shows, there's 40 people in a room because these things are just beautiful and people all want to hear them. So it's sort of not a fair place to really judge them. So I've never really had the ability to listen to them sort of one-on-one like I did today.
Within 5 minutes of switching from a box in the exact same listening position,
totally
exact same
different.
room, 5 minutes later you're listening to MBL. Yeah, when I was sitting right behind you, all of a sudden it was like, and then, I'm a big dipole fan. If you've seen my speakers, and actually last night we spent time listening to my speakers, and the radiation pattern that I have here is something that I think Doug was appreciating. So when he heard the MBLs, which are omnidirectional, I know for me it was like, this is what I like myself, and I think for him it made him kind of a fan of that style.
It was amazing. I mean, I still struggled though because I still loved the YG acoustics. I'm used to a cabinet speaker. You're more used to the dipole. So for me, the YG was still sonic beauty. This was different, beautiful. I was impressed, but it made the decision much more challenging because I was looking for something different, and this certainly was different from anything I've had in my systems.
And one thing we had to factor in is that they were using 100-watt Class A amps from Vantage Audio, which 100 watts is not really that much for MBLs. They really require a lot more. Now, I think he switched it into AB mode because that amp could go into AB, and
it sounded better in AB mode. I felt.
And so I think Doug is going to go with the same thing that I'm doing with the Steve McCormick custom monoblocks. He's already got one of Steve's amps, so he's going to do the conversion to monoblocks. So he's going to have over 500 watts into those MBLs. So bass control probably will get even better and may mitigate some of the one concern that Doug had about the MBL. And while we're on that topic, I'll just give a shout out to Steve McCormick as well. Got to give a shout out to 3MA Audio for the great customer service today. Spent all day with us, literally, and just changed them out.
They're
offered
fantastic.
to keep on going back and forth. Took all his gear on trade, worked a good deal for him. So, but I wanted to give a shout out to Steve McCormick because I called him on a Saturday midday. He was at a hardware store at the time. He said, yeah, let me call you right back. Got on a conference call with Doug and I. We were telling him he's doing the amps, telling him what speakers is there anything that he needs to be concerned about, and based on his experiences, has he had any experiences with MBLs, YG, or Rockports that would be not noticeable in an audition, or things to be concerned about with placement? And he spent a lot of time with us sharing his thoughts, which was very helpful. So a shout out to Steve McCormick, and that level of service today was really what is good to point out, because so few people nowadays have that experience in the audiophile world. There's always these bad experiences. So it's important to highlight the people that are giving that extra
Not just the
level.
audiophile world, just in general.
In general, exactly.
It was a pleasure to work with them today, and I thank them as well. They met us there early. They moved all the gear around, let us listen to as much as we wanted to listen to. We never felt like we were being
No
rushed
pressure
or
at
anything.
all, and all kinds of options. So yeah, shout out to everybody that helped us today, Steve McCormick and 3MA Audio. So what was your eventual decision?
I went with Bose.
Going with the Bose?
So I went with MBL. Little bit more expensive than the others. I just was looking for something different, and to me, I mean, ever since I got into this hobby, just like a kid looking at his first, Atari game system, I'm showing my age or whatever, I'm like a kid in a candy store looking at the technology of the MBL. So it wasn't really a fair fight, because from the first time I saw it, I thought,
Right.
Those are the ones I'm going to pick. But after hearing it, I loved it. It's very, very different than what I had. And that was my only reluctance, is this too different? You kept talking about, if you're going to be concerned about that lower bass, but I was comforted. I played some tracks of music that I'm very, very familiar with, and the bass was plenty tight, plenty there. I'm not worried that that's going to be a downside on this, and I'm very excited to hear it with Steve McCormick's amps. I think there's going to just be better control, better I'm excited.
This
about
was
it.
your first time hearing mine after I got the monoblocks as well.
Correct. And I've heard Jason's system before. I know that they can't really hear it though on YouTube,
No,
but
no.
It kind of blew me away last night when we were listening to it for the first time. I mean, I was really impressed because I've heard his system before, and he's done a lot of things that I'm sure he's going to talk about on his videos. It probably already has, but yeah, it's impressive. But yeah, I went with the MBLs. I'm gonna do a little room treatment stuff too, but it's not a lot. That's the one nice thing about omnidirectional is you really don't have to get crazy with absorbers and this and that because it really utilizes the room for its sound as opposed to cabinet speakers, which are just sort of blowing sound at you, and you have to try to do some things to keep it from reflecting all over the room. So I'm excited. We'll see what happens. I think I'm gonna be happy with my decision, but we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, I thank you for taking me on the ride. It was a lot of fun today. I ended up with those tube traps that I think I took a video for, so I just installed them, and we'll see if that makes any difference. We're gonna do some listening tonight. We'll have some follow-up videos where maybe we'll do a Zoom call with Doug or some videos where we can see his room now, his lumen whites and aeons, what he's moving from. I think it's important to note that he does not have a system that has any major issues now. So part of the decision was being something different. Maybe if he didn't have lumen whites all this time, going with the YGs. I know a month ago, YG was pretty much your choice,
That's right.
Until we found out that we could audition.
Going.
Yeah, we were totally convinced that you were going to go with the YG. So the MBL did definitely blow him away, both in a looks perspective and presentation, when he was previously pretty set on YG. And in fact, you were even calling the YG office to see if there's anybody in your area.
Yep.
So yeah, it
I
definitely.
had my mind made up. It just goes to show you.
Yeah, you got
when you listen, you can change your mind.
You got to audition, and these speakers are going to take a little bit to set up, but I think they will give you that presentation and change that you're looking for. And they're lifetime speakers.
And they're going to come set them up for me. So another shout out. I mean, it's just great.
They're going to come all the way to New Orleans to set them up. So again, guys, I mean, yes, these are expensive speakers, but the level of service, you can spend a fortune at Louis Vuitton and they treat you like crap. So, again, shout out to those guys, and shout out to Doug for taking us on the ride today. We'll do some future videos and when he gets them installed. So subscribe, sign up for notifications, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.